All right, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Happy Friday. I know that's usually the intro that starts Kingdom on the Road, but we are doing something a little bit different this morning, namely because Ant is off on another speaking engagement. Pray for him as he is one of the speakers at an event that's happening in his home area this weekend, but we persist. We are jumping into a topic of conversation. So what you all need to learn is that really the reason why we're doing this today is because I'm a good broadcast partner. Because I finally let Andrew out of his cage and let him run wild as far as this goes, because he's been pestering me to do this for 2 weeks. No, so we said yesterday, I made a crack yesterday when we started our Messiah Figures in Media episode. There's a lot going on, and I'm sure you are expecting us to talk about the current events and goings on and all of the plethora of nonsense, but we are going to do exactly not that. This morning, for better or for worse, we're going there. No, jokes aside, so there's been a lot. Like, I'm being a little satirical to add some levity to what is otherwise an unfortunately heavy conversation. And the reality is, we are seeing a rat race of a lot of different stuff, and a lot of different backbiting, and a lot of different groups nipping at each other within Christendom. And in the midst of all of that, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of blurring of lines, and I'm hearing a lot of jabs being taken, and I'm hearing a lot of discourse, but not a lot in the way of explanation, and that's what we're here to do
Yeah.
today. So I am going to turn it over to Andrew to go off, because Lord knows he knows exactly where he wants this stream to go.
So yeah, I mean we are kind of talking about what's been going on, but we're not. I think is actually a better way of putting it because it's not just the past week or so that's been highlighting all of this because this is something that we've been accused of quite a bit over the years. I doubt you have as much, Joe, but there is a what is politics, what is religion, what is faith, what is loving the neighbor, what is not loving your neighbor, what does God actually mean by love your neighbor, all of this stuff. And I think right now, especially, is a good time to just kind of lay out what what the difference actually is. So that way, maybe, hopefully, at least in some places, maybe the confusion and misrepresentations and everything can stop. Because I know we get a lot of people that claim that we have let, well, politics infect our faith, is the phrase that gets used a lot. Um, Meanwhile, their response to that is, well, we have, our faith is infecting our politics. And it is always around things that are much more dealing with sex immorality and as far as if you are against those, if you are anti those things, anti morality or anti quote unquote biblical marriage, then that means that you are not letting faith infect your politics, you're infect your faith, and vice versa. If you want to see medicine affordable, peace, food on the table for the poor, things like that, then that means that you have let politics infect your faith because those are just liberal talking points. Neither of those are actually correct, and so that's what we want to actually talk about what it means to what politics are, what faith is, how those two interact, and then ultimately we want to get to the fact that regardless of whether you're somebody that wants to say politics matters, or if you're somebody that says politics don't matter, or if you're somebody that says I don't know where I stand on all of this, ultimately we all should arrive back at that the call of Christ is that we love God and love our neighbor. And so what does that look like? So yeah, I mean that's kind of where we want to go with it, if that makes sense. Joe, you're looking like that did make sense, so tell me if I need to stop and define before we move on or not.
I mean, so uh, and Andrew pulled me out of my hole, and so now I'm gonna play the crotchety co-host. Okay.
I expect nothing less.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
So
stuck.
there's already points in what Andrew is saying that I am sure have elicited some kind of entrenching thought process in whatever it is that you think of when thinking about these things. And frankly, my dear, in the words of the great philosophical film Casablanca, when it comes to the whole idea of whether or not you are left, right, or center, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I don't care. That's not the point. The point
Right.
is, are we drawing clear delineations and correct delineations between what is political and what is faith? And so
Yes.
when we look at the teachings of Jesus and we look at our political stances, get off your soapbox for 30 seconds of wanting to blast your stance and take in a second of, okay, let's at least authentically separate these things out if you're looking to um state that you are doing such a thing. I guess if you're
Yes.
not doing such a thing, I guess whatever. I mean, at least you're being authentic to what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to say that you are separating those two things out, then actually put in the legwork to figure out what is and what isn't.
Yeah, and so that's part of what the whole point of what we're doing is that the because of the nature of the world that we live in, the everything ends up getting thrown into the left right spectrum for the most part. Um, and that's part of the problem is that we have decided that left right is the political spectrum and that left means um, left means one thing, right means another. The reality is that just not even talking biblically here for a second, just politically, the majority of American history, the rest of the world has always looked at even the most left wing Democrats, liberals, whatever you want to call them, within American politics as right wing. We are very much center right in terms of culture compared to the rest of the world. So that's part of the reason why it's ridiculous to even start using the left right paradigm because we don't even use it right. But the bigger thing I think is that again we've allowed the way that culture talks about this stuff to change the way that we talk about this stuff as believers as well, because we immediately associate certain things as being political now just because of the fact that we've heard politicians talk about it once or twice. And that's really where
Hey,
I want to start.
hang on, Ashbet, because Geo's got my back in the comment section
Oh,
because
I can't
he's
see the comments.
already
Why can't
here.
I see? Oh, there they are. I got it.
Because you're on a lake fishing
No,
while
it's
you're doing
because
it. Anyway,
Restream. It's because Restream hates us. Is why I finally found him.
it's because you're trying to do it from a phone. Anyway, Geo's in the comment section,
What up,
and
Geo?
he's kicking off exactly where I exactly what sparked to my mind as soon as you started saying what you were saying. First off, what's up, dude? Glad you are with us this morning. Jesus answered, "My king is not, or my kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world." And then he says, geo reporting for mod duties. Glad you are here to
And before
fight a good fight.
we also need to do something also because we he told me about it and then we haven't been on air, but we need to also say congrats to Geo and Panda who are in the comments all the time because they just got engaged recently. So congratulations to them also.
I didn't even know you guys were a thing until Andrew told me that. Congratulations, guys! Awesome. And then real quick says, well, then Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what is God's." Okay, so you're speaking in terms like this is something new, and I a lot of times, for those of you that don't know me, I have an extreme love hate relationship with philosophy. I think there is an upper bound limit to philosophy because eventually it is literally a dog chasing its own tail. It's just, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? At some point in the philosophical journey, we stop caring about getting answers. We only want to ask bigger and
Yeah.
bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger existential questions. But there is a level, because of my existential heart, that does vibe with me, and it kind of rests with one single statement: there's nothing new under the sun. This is not a new paradigm. This is not because we've
No.
heard some politician talk about it a couple of times. This is not because of left, right, or center. This is not because of Republican or Democrat. This is not because of the United States. This is a uniquely human issue that if you put more than one side in an equation, immediately there will be tribalism. Immediately there will be side picking. Immediately there will be backbiting. There will immediately be somebody who says, "My way is the best way of doing it." Literally, Jesus was dealing with the exact same thing, just in a different culture, in a different context, with different aesthetics, different laws of the land, and all of that sort of stuff. And so one thing, even if you didn't mean it, even if you're gonna pull a hamstring trying to paddle your way backward, I want people to hear that while I think things like social media are kerosene for a fire that was already started, while I think that things like having a microphone that anybody can buy for 20 bucks and start up a free platform has seriously degraded the court of public discourse. Keyboards have seriously degraded public discourse because people got real comfortable, too comfortable, acting a fool from the other side of a keyboard and saying some nonsense that I promise you they would never say to somebody's face. Yes, all of
Right.
that is true. Absolutely. That being said, though, at the root and core of this whole thing, all we are seeing is the modernization of an age old issue that people will always see. People will always conceive of something that is not of God, say that is of God, and 1000% miss the point. The area that we always reference, what is the area that we always reference when we start talking about the ways that we are called to live as Christians? Matthew 5 through 7. What is Matthew 5 through 7? A reorientation of something that happened a long time before that. So literally, Jesus was doing the exact same thing.
And that's the key, is that this isn't a new thing, because that's part of where I was going, is that what we hear a lot of the times is that a lot of this stuff that we talk about a lot, Matthew 5 through 7 specifically, um, as well as, when, for those that don't know, Joe was with me over on Misfits, 2-3 months ago, and we talked about nonviolence. Last year we did the whole thing on Matthew 25. Um, we are told repeatedly that these are new age liberal talking points, but the reality is that what we are talking about is nothing new. This is stuff that Jesus talked about and talked a lot about, and that not only did Jesus talk about them, the prophets talked about them before Jesus even came on the scene. But now all of a sudden we're being told that this is what politics are, and that what faith is something completely different. And what we're being told is that faith is about morality and making sure people live up to a standard. And that if we start talking about care for the marginalized, care for others, if we use the word justice or oppression, then at that point we are using politics and not faith. And that is where I think one of the biggest, and this is not you, and part of what Joe and I also talked about off air is the fact that this is not a, like, this is all one side does this and the other side doesn't. This is coming from both sides of the issue, where we have people conflating politics with faith and faith with politics, and they're accusing the other side of doing it, and they're not recognizing that they've done it as well, because we don't fully grasp what those things actually mean. And that, I think, is where the problem is lying, is that we're using terms that we don't understand. And so that's what the it, so this is where most of my conversations are coming out, that directed this discussion, is that if we talk about something like, we think that kids should be able to have access to medicine, something like that, we are told repeatedly that that is a Marxist liberal talking point, and that we have got to stop letting politics into our faith. But this is the key, is that it's not politics, it's people that we're talking about. Because what is it that Jesus actually calls us to do? It's to love our neighbor. Loving our neighbor doesn't fit within any of the political spectrums. That's literally that. I mean, that's the entire point of what I just saw his comment. That's the entire point of the verse that Gio quoted, right? My kingdom is not of this world. It's not of this world because the ways of Jesus do not fit within a political ideology that we have ever had on this earth. And so if we're going to continue to talk about this idea of, well, we need to let faith interpret our politics, then we need to decide what we actually mean by that, because the reality is that faith is going to be counter to politics if that faith is actually in Jesus. And so that's where I think why we see the tribalism, why we see everything else, is much more along the lines of what we see out of 1 Corinthians 1, as far as the fact that we are looking for a voice to lead us and to rally behind, rather than it is any other kind of, I mean, the one that everybody throws around is Romans 13, as far as, well, you're misinterpreting it wrong, or you're misinterpreting it wrong. I think it more so lies in the fact that we are still looking for voices to lead us that are not Jesus.
don't don't know how I feel about about the statement that you made that our faith will always run counter to our politics, because it's not that I don't. I think part of the issue is that we have in on both sides become convinced that they are tied. I don't mean left or right. I mean pro politics and religion, anti politics and religion. I think we both have. I think both sides have become entrenched in this idea um, of this is that they have to have some kind of link to each other, even if it's opposing sides of the magnet, even if their link is that they shouldn't be linked. It's just that, like, okay, sitting on my desk right now, I've got a coffee cup and I've got a mouse. This coffee cup holds coffee, this mouse controls my cursor. They don't do the same thing, they sit on the same desk. That is the only connection point that they have. They are two very different things. That's my point when it comes to the whole faith, and because folks that
I think
I,
I think
I
we
just
just need to end the stream right here and go with this: that the only hope for humanity
well,
is an extraterrestrial takeover.
good, good night, everybody. Got it in one. Good
Yep,
job.
there it is.
I'm just gonna leave this up. I'm just gonna leave this up on the screen for the rest of the stream.
Yep,
Um, so
love it.
I just I think part of the issue is we've so, like, this has become so overcomplicated because somebody has something to say about it on a constant basis, that you should do this and you shouldn't do that and you should do this and this is that. And I think a bigger problem is not even that the politics are the issue. It's a level deeper of everything is there's an expectation of reaction out
Hmm.
of the pulpit, and that pulpits and content creators react to everything, and thus put
Yeah,
themselves in a situation where they are constantly commentating on current events, and they're constantly keeping their nose in the political zeitgeist. That's part of the issue of why you're going to see a fundamental divide between, and maybe not divide, I'm not gonna, whatever, there's probably a better word, figure it out, it's fine. um between Andrew and I, because I it's not that I don't have anything to say, it's that it's not important. It's not that I don't have an opinion, it's that it's not the top priority. And that's part of the issue when talking about this stuff, is like, I made one comment about the whole Charlie Kirk thing. Well, to account when I was asked in person about my opinions on it. Do I agree with everything that the man said and the man stood for? Absolutely not. Should it have gone down like that? Absolutely not. And the other thing that I said was that, okay, there's a big stadium show for the guy, there's a big stadium memorial for the guy, the whole 9 yards. What about the kids that were killed in the school shooting? I'm not
yeah.
talking about guns. I'm talking about just the human lives. And
Talking
the
about
history
people.
books, the history books will not remember that. In the
Yeah,
same way that when you look at, and I compared that to when Kobe Bryant died in the plane
yeah.
crash, the helicopter crash, that there were like 8 people on board, including, I'm pretty sure, his kids, or at least one of his kids. I don't
One
know.
of his one daughter. Yeah, one of his daughter, and then one of the girls that was on his basketball team that he coached also.
Um, yeah, they passed away, and I've literally never heard one person talk about any of them. Just hero worshiping a basketball player that they've never met a day in their life, talking about how he was a hero and talking about how he was so inspiring. And if you like basketball, I don't care. If you vote for Trump, I don't care. If you're conservative, guess what? I don't care.
Hmm.
Are you a Christian? Okay. If we have that settled, if you're not, you play by your own playbook, my man. Like, then
Yeah.
go in peace because you're not playing by the same playbook, and you are not under the same level of responsibility. So go do what you got to do. This one's not for you. If you are though, are you living in a way that reflects the teachings of Jesus?
We're back to.
That's the Tootsie Roll center of the Tootsie Pop. And
Yeah.
that's where I think that's where I think a lot of this conversation boils down to is it's the same thing that we've been saying for literally years now on Friday mornings of um there is a fundamental misunderstanding of the teachings of Jesus. That
Yeah.
for the longest time, it's been about morality. For the longest time, it's been about a to do list. That's why when I teach this class called Navigating Scripture, the first thing that I do, literally the first thing that I do before we open up the Bible, before we start to get into Old Testament, New Testament, the whole thing's one continuous narrative that ultimately leads to Jesus or tools for any of it, the first thing that we touch is mindset.
Hmm.
It's the mindset that you approach scripture with. Because if you have a compulsion that you need to read X amount or else, you have to do enough or else, you have to be something or else. Doesn't matter how much you read. It doesn't matter how many Sundays you attend. It doesn't matter how much you do or how much you volunteer. You will always be behind the eight ball because shame is a moving goalpost. And that's
Yes.
where I think a lot of this is born out of that and in inherent fear, an inherent fear of others,
Yeah.
an inherent fear of the pollution of sin, that something will taint the purity that we can create as Christians. And to that I say, my friend, you think very highly of yourself. Like I don't like look, man, I
It's
could sit here. I could sit here. Don't get me wrong. I could sit here. To all of you watching right now, I could sit here and I could give you the next hour of the most beautiful sermon that you have ever heard in your whole friggin' life on Matthew 5 through 7. Why? Because I've spent years, and I mean years with an S, studying
literal years.
and
Yeah.
I could say it beautifully, but that's not going to catch anyone's attention who isn't already listening. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so
And
my goal in
that's
this isn't so much to be a yes, it is to rib Andrew, like 1000%, because one of my life's joys is getting on the air and ribbing Andrew and making him work for it the entire time. It's so much fun.
he, he said that his yesterday he said his love language is sending, reels and stuff like that. His other love or his coping skill though is giving me a hard time. So we've now established both.
Yeah, I believe my exact verbiage was sending unhinged meme garbage. I think that was my
Yes,
exact
that's right. Unhinged mean garbage. That's right. That's what it was. My bad.
verbiage.
Well, but I think what you've highlighted though is why I said earlier that the key there is not any of those passages that people like to use when we get into the politics discussion. This is not Romans 13. This isn't even the one that Geo highlighted directly because this is really a First Corinthians 1 issue. Is Christ divided? If Christ is not divided, then why are we having these kind of discussions to where if you vote one way, then you are not a Christian? Or if you believe in this policy, then you are not a Christian. Why do we have that if Christ is not divided? And that's where and I mean you even said there the whole thing with the why you were talking about school shootings and things like that. It had nothing to do with guns. Our concern wasn't the guns. Our concern are there were image bearers that died. That should be where the focus of the church is at. There were image bearers that died. So how can we serve the families? How can we serve the community? How can we serve the state that it happened in? How can we serve the country that it happened in?
Real quick,
That
let me
should be
throw
our
this out there.
concern.
It should be, and now let me throw this out there to the viewing audience. This doesn't usually happen. Usually, we have a much higher percentage of viewers on YouTube, specifically. But a lot of y'all are tuning in right now from Twitch, um, and Twitch is a different
Hey, what's
is a
up?
it's a different kind of place. And first off, let me throw out the old one that we haven't
Promote.
said in a minute. Um, if you are watching from Twitch, what I need you to do is chime in the comment section. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and you will be entered into a giveaway for a coupon to our merch shop, where you'll be able to get a discount and all of that. And let people know that we are live on Twitch. We are actively trying to grow that because socials and YouTube are becoming increasingly more problematic, and we would rather own our audience on Twitch. And that, friends. That, friends, in case you were wondering, is the look of defeat. That is man being bested by nature, yet again. At least this time you didn't snap his pole.
Yes, at least that. I had that thing on and it jumped and threw the hook. That's why if I was able to do a rear camera, you would have seen it face up at you.
Yeah.
Man,
Um, but there tends to be a unique audience on Twitch. Y'all tend to think differently than socials or YouTube or these other audiences or things like that. So we're going to be hitting a lot of stuff rapid fire, and it's kind of like setting a buffet rather than setting a dinner plate. You've got a little bit of this and you've got a little bit
yeah,
of that, and we're going to touch on this and we're going to touch on that. But what we can't do is read your mind. We don't have it like that. And so, if there's something that we leave off the buffet table, or if there's a buffet piece that we put out and we just walk past it and keep setting up more, um, tell us to stop. Tell us to hold up and go back to the thing that you've got questions about. Because if we're going to do something like this, the goal is to equip Christians to be able to think through this. I'm not here to tell you how to vote.
yeah,
I'm not here to tell you. There are more than enough Christian channels that are there to get you pissed off. Their whole thing is to get you angry. And if you know, you know. Yeah, I'm not. You can sit here and get people riled up all you want to sit here and get people riled up and all of that sort of stuff. That's not helpful. So, the goal here is to help
no,
you be able to navigate your way through and think critically. That's all we're asking for, is think critically when it comes to these things. Do not take our word for it, but also don't take your pastors, your padres, or your best friend's word for it either. Figure it out for yourself.
yeah. And it's if 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 listening to this is something where like the stuff we've already just said, the stuff we've already said is something where you immediately are thinking that this is like, oh well, they're telling me how to vote. Again, that's where I would say stop for a second and think, why is it that us saying people matter, Christ is not divided, Christ's kingdom is not of this world, why is that something that is triggering this idea for you that, oh well, they're telling me how to vote? Because that's part of what we're getting, is that is part of the dynamic that we have currently and have had for a long time, is that the teachings of Jesus are tied specifically to one style of voting.
And that's not and I've watched that happen universally. So folks that think that
Yeah.
folks that think that they folks that hear me speak about sociological points of view tend to automatically assume that I'm a Democrat. Um
Mm-hmm.
I'll shock the world and go ahead and give my stance on government. Piss off. That's my stance on government. Get away from me. Get away from my business. Get away from my money. And that's my stance. And so it's you automatically get put in a box by some when you start talking about caring for people, loving for people, accepting people, the whole nine yards. And because I hear a lot of folks then turn around and say stuff like Jesus was a socialist and and things like that,
Yeah.
and Jesus would have voted Democrat, or the Democratic side is more in line with um with Jesus's teachings, even if he wasn't what even if he didn't subscribe to the political stance, then he still like sided with that and all of that sort of stuff. um all manner of flavor. Just like I think it's easy to harp on the conservative side because we are seeing a heyday for Christian nationalism. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna give Andrew all manner of crap if his phone spazzes out because he insisted on being on the
No,
water.
somebody called me, and so it turned off everything. So I had to refresh the page.
Anyway,
It was scam
um,
calls causing problems.
so it's it's easy to look at this from a particular worldview and say
Yeah,
like, hey, like the conservatives are the problem, the nationalists are the problem, this group is the problem, when in all actuality what we're talking about isn't so much about this group is the problem as it is we really need to divorce these topics from each other wholesale, like
yeah,
not just a little bit, but like literally, like they should never the two shall meet sort of situation, rather
yeah.
than trying to cooperate those things. And that's why we say it's not a matter of if you are a Christian. Like there is another member of our
Network.
network, very like, well, no notes like theologically. We tend to jive. As far as sociological things, tend to jive the whole nine yards. And even though I am not going to be the first person that jumps up and has a long dissertation about politics and all of this sort of stuff, I cannot follow him into the area of water that says because we are Christian, we should not be involved in politics.
Right.
I would draw the line there, even though I choose to generally not be involved in politics until I am dragged out by one of my co-hosts. Um, but this is not a statement piece on what you should or should not be doing, other than
Yeah.
like we need to move away from, like, it's when you create content online or when you make a post online, generally the idea is you get the most amount of impact out of the least amount of words spoken or typed. Generally that's what people go for, and there's very little in the way of nuance from behind a keyboard or from behind a microphone. That's part of why in this network we do so many live streams,
Yeah.
because it gives the time and space to be able to at least have some measure of nuance. And even still, we really cannot get to the full measure of nuance within the digital space that really is needed in any kind of conversation to be able to actually flush out different perspectives and different points of view and different things like that. And so we have this
And it
moment
also
now.
gives us.
Good.
I was gonna say it also gives us, and this is the other thing with it, is that like we said this last week when we were in Samuel, is that it also gives people the opportunity to see people who, yeah, we're content creators, but all of us are pastors. All of us are trained pastors. We're educated in this stuff. We know what's going on. But yeah, it gives people a chance to also see us have to stop and think, because that's part of the issue that we have with the other issue you have with social media. You can type stuff out and erase and edit and have AI check it, and you can do all this other stuff and then post, and you look super confident, but in reality you may be sweating the entire time you're about to post something. But the world thinks you're super confident.
Mhm.
Live streams take that away. It forces transparency.
Yeah.
Beyond even the nuance, it forces transparency, it forces honesty. And that's what, and really, you know, this is right before my phone cut out. This is what I was going to say. The too long didn't listen version of what we're going to be getting at is love God, love your neighbor. That's it. Like, that's the too long didn't listen. That is what your call is as a Christian: is love God, love your neighbor.
So expand that out, because I'm not going to be the person to be able to do it. I'll give you the pastoral version of it 7 days a week, no problem. But when you're talking about, okay, what do I do with um what do I do with processing my political stance as far as all of this goes, and divorcing that language and all of that? Like, start to unpack the practicality of divorcing those concepts away from like religious language, and like, well,
So there's actually,
the faith-based perspective, I guess, is a better way of putting it.
right. There's actually two ways I can do it. One of them will ruin politics for you forever. The other one is going to be much more, a little bit more nuanced. After what we were just talking about, a little bit more nuanced. So I'll start with that one, and then if we want to do the let me ruin politics for you forever as a Christian, I will. Um, I think the biggest piece is doing what we already have talked about. Is we've got to stop looking at these issues as political issues. Is the first part of it. Beyond just divorcing, well, I don't, divorcing political parties and partisanism and tribalism and all these other things. Stop looking at things as political issues and start looking at them as gospel issues. That really is the key. But to do that, that requires us to start looking inward first, and we've got to look at this from the love God, love neighbor perspective of, if I love God, then that means that we now are entering into the whole Romans 12 thing, right? We should be seeking out to have our mind renewed by the Spirit towards the will of Christ. And if we're saying that that is our goal, that we want a renewed mind towards the will of Christ, then we need to figure out what the will of Christ is. And he's already told us what the will of Christ is. The will of Christ is that he desires that all men be saved. He desires to bring good news to the poor. He desires to set the captives free, both physically and spiritually. He desires to see healing come in every single format, because Christ is God in general, but Christ is a redeemer. Redemption is the goal. Redemption is the will. And so if that is our understanding of the gospel, that is about redemption, is about redemption physically, is about redemption spiritually. It is about seeking out the people that Christ sought out. Now suddenly, when we start looking at these different things, it doesn't matter who made the statement. If they are making a statement that is causing harm to somebody that bears the image of Christ, we should be rejecting that. If they are making a statement that is going to provide relief for someone that bears the image of Christ, then we should be supporting that. Doesn't matter who's saying it, doesn't matter what year it is, doesn't matter what party it was, doesn't matter what logo it has on it. If they are going to say something or push something that is going to better allow us to seek out the will of Christ, which is the redemption of all mankind, and that is about seeking out the prosperity in terms of health, in terms of freedom, in terms of relief from oppression, all these kind of things. It doesn't matter who says it because Christ is not divided. And if Christ is not divided, then when we see someone that is talking about doing something that is going to promote his desire for mankind, that is what we should be focusing on. And so it starts really with us understand. This is why I wrote the piece I did last week of who do you say Jesus is? That really is the starting point, because if your Jesus does not look like the Jesus of the Gospels, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to do this stuff. You're not going to be able to divorce it out, because if your Jesus is not looking like the Jesus of the Gospels, you are going to wind up still wearing the hat of a political party or ideology of the earth.
Yeah. No, I'm curious because I've got my own. Am I still muted? No, I'm
No, you're
okay.
not. You're good.
Um, I've got my own version of let me pop the bubble for folks, and let me be the wet blanket on people's parade. But I'm curious to know what your let me ruin politics for you perspective is.
All right. So I already know what a lot of the response is going to be, because it's the same response we get when we do this level of um, really it is an if then type of statement, just like we do with nationalism. So I already pulled it up. One of the definitions, the accepted definition from the Oxford Dictionary, which is actually technically speaking the globally recognized English dictionary that people seem to forget that that's actually technically the official one. Although shout out to Webster's social media team, because you guys have been killing it lately.
They're on
Um,
one right now.
oh
Their
man,
social
it is.
media team is locked in right now.
Yes, if you so quick sidebar, if you are on social media and have not gone to Merriam-Webster's social media accounts, do it. Once we're done, go check them out because they are on fire right now. But all
Yeah.
that to say, this is the definition of politics out of Oxford. Is activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. And then the second definition with it is activities within an organization that are aimed at improving someone's status or position and are typically considered to be devious or divisive. So the definition of politics is seeking power, being devious, being divisive. You can't do that and say that you are following after the will of Christ. It's that simple. Politics can't work within a Christian mindset just based off of definitions alone. If you are seeking after politics, then you have to divorce Jesus's teachings.
So
If you are
again,
seeking Jesus's teachings, you're going to have to divorce politics. It doesn't mean don't. It doesn't. It's the same discussion that we've had on Misfits a couple of times related to capitalism and things like that. We live in a system that requires politics within our world. It doesn't mean that we don't live within the system. It just means that we don't make that system our god.
that should take the teeth out of anyone who wants to bite back and say
Should,
that,
but
oh, so you're just saying don't vote, because we're not saying that.
no.
Engage in whatever civic liberties you want to engage in. That's fine, but it's not inherently Christian to do so. It's not inherently Christian to have a civic liberty. It's not inherently Christian to have a constitutional liberty. It's not inherently Christian to live in one area or another. It is not inherently Christian to support one cause over another. It is not inherently Christian to avoid certain things because they conflict with you morally. Actually, I would wager that if you really dig into that last concept, more often than not, that's actually you going after your moral stance is probably more likely than not.
Uh-oh. I think I lost you, Joe. Gio, can you hear me? You're doing the remix. Are you able to hear me, Gio? Okay. So we lost Joe, not me, and we have proof of that. I just want to point that out, that even though I'm on the boat in the middle of the lake, it was not me that we lost that time. Um, one thing I will, because Joe did his, I'll add mine, because this is part of the other thing that we run into. One of the other things that you've got to consider when you have this kind of discussion is, what is it that God has called you to do personally as well? The call for all believers is to love God and love God, love neighbor, right? That is the call. There are some people though where how we love our neighbor is going to look a little bit different based off of where you're located, based off of the needs of your community, based off of your own personal gifts, based off all of these different things. I just had this discussion with our pastor here a week or so ago. There are people that are called to have these kind of discussions like we're talking about today. Whether it's on social media, whether it's not, to be a voice within the conversation that is there saying exactly what we've been saying, as far as you need to, this is not politics, this is people. Or is there saying, it, but to do that effectively, you have to already have done the divorcing of the political parties. You cannot be tied to the stuff that we've been talking about and be able to then go and say, oh, I'm going to go enter this arena and be able to say and do it effectively. If you are still attached to the parties or the paradigms or whatever you want to call it, if you have not done the work that we talked about before, you are not going to be able to effectively go into these kind of places without it causing division, rather than doing what we've talked about before, which is Christ divided? No. So why are we having division within the church? Who is it that you say Jesus is? Asking people the question of that. One thing that, because Joe mentioned his take on it. I'll be transparent for a second as well with mine on it, as Joe tries to figure out why he keeps cutting out. I have never actually voted for a federal level official. I have voted for local, I've voted for state, but I have never actually, I have intentionally left the federal level officials blank. Part of the reason that I am doing that is because of the fact that it is something that I have felt God calling me to do, because if I put a check mark next to one of those names, it is going to potentially be something that is going to cause me, and this is a personal thing. This is not a everybody does it thing. That's why I'm saying it. This is a personal thing between what God has called me to do versus other people. Me putting a check mark next to the name potentially undoes everything that I have been working towards. Now, that does not mean that everybody is called to that. It does not mean that we're out here telling you not to vote. It means that before you start to actually try to do any of the kind of work online or in person, even in this area, you've got to have done the work that we talked about at the beginning, which is to start to look inward and say, am I loving God in the way that I am approaching this stuff? Is this a kingdom centered, Christ centered perspective on the world that I have based on the way that I am interacting with political discourse and everything else? Because if it's not, we have a problem. And then once you do that, then the next step of that, like we said, it's the Romans 12 stuff of renewing our mind. It's a it's a seeking out the will of Christ, all of that, and then once that has happened, then it becomes is my political views something that is to benefit me, or is it to benefit my neighbor? Because the call of a Christian, oh, I missed him. Oh, maybe, yeah, I missed him. The call of a Christian, we talked about this a few seasons back on Misfits. When we are dealing with politics and voting and things like that, the call of a Christian is to seek the the benefit, the prosperity, the comfort of others, not ourselves. So that does mean sometimes that the proper way to look at some of these issues is going to be something that seems to be self-defeating, something that puts us in a bad spot. And if we are still tied to politics, like we said, that is about seeking power and is about being devious and dishonest, it's going to be very hard for us to be able to say, I would rather see this person succeed than myself. But if we are tied to the will of Christ, Philippians 2, then we are going to be able to say they are greater and their interests matter more. Because that is what Christ has done for us, is that he humbled himself and sought out the interests of us rather than seeking his own glory and power. Welcome back, Joe. Are you back? Maybe not. I think he's still lost. He was having some internet issues earlier this week, so he may still be out. I don't know if maybe I'm the one that's out. Am I still here, Joe? You still able to hear me? Oh, maybe I'm the one that's out. Oh, I'm still here. Okay. So, with all of that, while we wait for Joe to regroup, is there any comments, questions, anything people have related to all of this stuff? Because we've said a lot, but ultimately the goal, and this is something that the goal of this is that we want people to remember what their actual goal is supposed to be. Which the goal of the church, the goal of Christianity, is to seek out the kingdom of God, seek that first, and then seek out the well-being of others. That's love God, love your neighbor in a different little bit of a different flavor. That is ultimately the goal of all of this, is that as all this stuff gets heavy and gets confusing and you have voices telling you to go one way or the other, that the ultimate goal that should decide how you react in all of these sort of situations is this loving God, and is this loving my neighbor? So Joe seems to be back and then lost again. Oh, are you back? Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes.
Hey, he's back. I tried to hold the fort down.
Yeah. So, I if this craps out again, we're ending the stream because I'm
Yeah,
cannot guarantee that as the one that I that is hosting the stream that I can keep this up. Um. So
I explained to him you were having internet issues earlier this week, also. So
yes. So yeah, I mean, I can't. So I guess I view any sort of I feel led to do X, Y, or Z at the voting booth. Um, I guess I view that in the same way that I view speaking in tongues. Have I ever spoken in tongues? No. Do I count it out as outside of the realm of possibility? No, I don't. It's along the same lines of being called one way or the other to do X, Y, or Z at the voting
right.
booth. Um, have I ever experienced being called to do anything? No. Do I think there that it is a slippery slope? Yes. Is it outside the realm of possibility for God? No. It's just that simple. And that's and
Yeah.
I don't know because for me I view it as so disconnected that I guess I just don't understand why there would be any level of don't do this as far as all of that goes. Um because like it's they're just inherently disconnected. And so having any kind of pull one way or the other just does not make sense to me. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think they just need to be left out of the same conversation, done and dusted.
And that's where we were saying why we were saying that the 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 reality is because this, like you said, people are making these kind of statements all the time that God wants you to vote one way, God wants you to vote the other way. It's going to look different for everybody as far as how you are going to best be used. I mean that is part of that's part of the beauty of the church is the diversity that we have in gifts and callings and networks and outreach and all these other things is that everybody has a different ability to be able to do the stuff that we've been talking about that others don't. And you know my my relationship with God and my calling is not the same as anybody else. And so of course I'm going to have some things that God has asked me to do that is different than everybody else. It doesn't mean that anybody else should even try to do them. The but the key, and this is what we say this every week as we're going through the Old Testament and everything else, is does what you are saying God is calling you to do line up with his character? Because if it is something that goes against the very things that we talked about, if you think that God is telling you to do something that is going against the will of Christ, that's not God talking to you. If you are saying that you are being called to do something that does not seek first the kingdom of God, God has not called you to do that. Like that is the key to a lot of, and that's why we keep saying that ultimately all of this starts with a personal inward look at where you stand with God personally, and then how is that going to then go outward into the world around you. It's the same. We say this on, I mean, I don't know how many different topics we've talked about over the past years where this has always been the thing, right, Joe? Of it's an Like we talk about this regularly, that if you're not doing the work inwardly, then there's no point in doing any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately it when you're breaking all of this down. Um, that the relationship that we have with God is so much.
Oh, we lost him again. All right, so we're probably going to be shutting the stream down here because I think we've lost Joe again. Um, yeah, ultimately, that this is really where we're at. Is that what we are saying God is calling us to do in the midst of all of these different things. Ooh, I might have a fish here. Let's see. Nope. Um, what God has called us to do in the midst of all of this different stuff is the same. It doesn't matter if it's politics or what it is. It's the same goal at the end. It's the same call at the end. We are God does not change based off of who is in office or what the political situation is. The call is the same regardless. It doesn't matter, and this is part of what happens also when you finally are able to divorce the idea that God is attached to a party or God is attached to a policy or all these different things, is that you're able to say that regardless of who comes to power, it doesn't change anything for me because my goal still stays the same. God still stays sovereign on his throne. And we just have to then go out and do the work based off of what we are seeing around us. You had said, Joe had said earlier about the fact that the one of the worst parts of content creation culture and social media is this reactionary idea and this thing that where pastors need to be reactionary all the time and all this other stuff. The one place where we in some cases do need to be reactionary is we need to be intentional about seeing what the needs are of the people around us so that we can respond and respond to the need, not to the person. And what I mean by that is we're not responding based off of we're not responding based off of immigration status. We're not responding based off of political party. We're not responding based off financial status. We're not responding based off of any of these other things. We are responding to everybody as the fact that they are image bearers that are in need. And Christ has already told us what we are supposed to do when there are image bearers in need, and that is to give them the water, give them the food, give them more than what they ask for, visit them when they are in prison, welcome in the stranger. All these things that we see from Matthew 5 through 7, Luke 4, Luke 6, Matthew 25, Matthew 19, Acts, the entire book, like that is how we are to respond to everyone because everyone bears the image of God.
Yep. That's
There's a
about
bass swimming right by me. I'm going to try to get.
that's about the size of it.
Yeah.
Literally every single time that I have gone to speak, I have been cut off by my internet, and so I think that's about the size of it, y'all. I think we've exhausted the point. If you have questions, go ahead and reach out on a one-on-one basis. But otherwise, I really think that it comes down to love God and love others.
Yes. And if you have questions, I will be online on the Misfits and the Misfits Outdoors channel for about an hour or so after this also if you want to keep talking there. So
All right, appreciate you.
he just cut out again. I don't know if he's going to end the stream or not. We'll see. There he is. Well, I'll stay with you until I'm sure that the stream is off because I don't. We're not going to just cast dead air here. So.